Today, Travis and I are out in Napa taking a look at the biggest, baddest Lexus available in America. It is the LX 700. Yes, LX 700H. Because for 2025, every LX gets a few tweaks, but most importantly, we now have an available hybrid system under the hood that combines the 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6 with a single electric motor and a 10-speed automatic transmission. We also get a new Overtrail model, which we're going to take a look at in just a moment. But let's talk about the LX first. This is logically the close relative to the Toyota Land Cruiser. Not the Land Cruiser we find in America, the Big Daddy Land Cruiser that we find worldwide. This is now the only way to get that in North America, and Lexus is not running away from that. In fact, they actually are really proud to say that all of what makes the Land Cruiser great internationally is here in the LX. Of course, plus this absolutely enormous grille. This has perhaps the most, I guess, traditional interpretation of Lexus's spindle grille left in North America, because a lot of the more recent Lexus models, they've gone for a spindle grille that merges into the side of the front. Now, as you may be hearing on camera, the fan is turning on and off, but the engine's not on because, again, hybrid system under the hood. We're going to take a look at that in a moment. Of course, we get full LED headlights, these sort of Nike swoosh DRLs up front, LED fog lights below, and yes, lots and lots of grille.
Depending on your model, you're gonna get different wheels. Here on the ultra luxury model, we're getting 22-inch wheels. There is still plenty of tire available. We get more tire on some of the other trims like we got in the Overtrail, but this is gonna be a nice match. It's sort of a chromey finish, although not totally chrome, and I think that does work with the rest of the look.
Now go ahead and stand up next to that LX, because the LX is an interesting entry in the luxury segment, because this is a body-on-frame SUV, but it's nowhere near as big as an Escalade or an Expedition or Navigator or Wagoneer, etc.
Yeah, it's gonna be on the compact end of what a 3-row SUV can be, but we still get plenty of space inside, but obviously it's not one where you have tons of people and tons of luggage.
Let's check out the taillights. How do you feel about this interpretation of the Lexus signature lighting in the back?
It's interesting. We've got a swoop coming down and then bar across, and they do a little bit of overlapping. I know your favorite thing here is going to be this amber turn signal.
I think totally is.
I think it's done really nicely. Everything stays pretty tight together.
I like the fact that this looks like a Lexus immediately, but it doesn't look just like a scaled up version of the RX or the NX or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the spindle grille I think is the most prominent Lexus feature on this particular model, but everything here stays fairly smooth but not shapeless, and I do think that's a hard thing to pull off, but they've done a pretty good job.
Now, if we look at this from this angle, it does look a little on the narrow and a little on the tall side. How do you feel about that? It's not quite as high-waisted, I would say, as something like a Santa Fe, but it does have a different proportion than we find in some of those other luxury options.
I think the only downside on the look here is that we don't get all the space that it looks like maybe we do. Because this is body on frame, that frame is taking a significant portion of what's happening under the skin. But also what we have, you'll see very clearly as soon as we open the back here.
We have a jacket falling out, that's what we have.
Well, 0 to 60 testing can do that sometimes, is that we have this hybrid battery that takes up a pretty big chunk of the space. You can see right where it wants to latch here, that would basically be where the floor is, and we've got about 3 or so inches above that we don't quite get because of that hybrid system.
Yeah, and interestingly, the battery is actually not inside the vehicle, it's actually under, between the body and the frame. Now, this is a body-on-frame SUV, so it has a reasonably high towing capacity, and we get a standard tow hitch receiver in every model. Let's go ahead and see if we can take the cover off easily. Oh no, it's those kind of pop rivets that actually are not easy to pull out. So trust us, it's under there.
Yeah, without crawling under it, we have 8,000 pounds of towing capacity and a trailer brake controller on these models.
We do, in every trim, which is a really nice touch. We also have an adaptive height suspension with a twist. This is not an air suspension, it's a hydraulic suspension. And Lexus says that they have made some tweaks to help it change height more rapidly than before. So they've actually added some electronic actuators to the hydraulic system to help it pump up and down more quickly. So how do we get from LX 600 to LX 700H? You'll notice it still says twin turbos, and we still find a 3.4-liter V6 under there. Interestingly, unlike Tundra and Sequoia, where they use a slightly different 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6 in the hybrid model, this one uses the exact same engine. We get nearly 460 horsepower, over 600 pound-feet of torque, but the reason it's the exact same 3.4-liter V6 is because this still has an alternator and still has a starter, what we don't find in the Tundra and in the Sequoia. Lexus says that was to give this some redundancy. And that's an interesting twist here. So instead of simply having the one motor that's going to be used to start the engine, stop the engine, all of that, This has a backup system, and it has an extra battery as well. So Lexus says this is to alleviate fears that anybody might have if they're out on a trail and they're worried about total hybrid system failure. Because behind the 3.4-liter V6 is a traditional 10-speed automatic transmission. So by retaining the alternator and the starter, this can actually completely remove the hybrid system from the equation. So if anything went wrong with the motor, anything went wrong with the battery or the inverter set or anything along those lines, it can simply delete them from the equation and run just like a regular LX600. There are a few limitations. There's a top speed limitation, which they weren't overly clear on at the moment. It sounds like it's around 60 miles an hour or so you can get out on the highway, but you may not be able to exceed certain highway speeds. But if you're out on a trail and you need 4 low, that still works. The lockers, those will still work. And you're gonna get a front locker in the new Overtrail model as well. We'll talk about that in just a second. So if you are concerned about that little H back there on the 700, because you're looking for something a bit more rugged, a bit more off-road capable, well, don't worry, because Lexus has integrated those systems that way you can actually delete the H effectively if something went wrong. The other big change, of course, is the Overtrail model. Very much like the Lexus GX, this is the most off-road capable version of the LX in North America, and therefore, the most off-road version of the Land Cruiser you can get in North America as well. And Lexus is very proud of that Land Cruiser heritage. Big news for this generation, we have a front locker. So in addition to the rear locker and the locking center, we have an actual mechanical locker up front. But you will notice that the Overtrail does not get a different front bumper. The lower portion of the bumper especially is exactly the same as the rest of the LX lineup. So if you do want to take your LX further off-road, especially if you're a second owner or a third owner in the future, you're probably going to want to try and find an aftermarket bumper. Coming around to the side, you'll notice the big change over here, 18-inch wheels, and of course, all-terrain tires. These are very similar tire to the ones that we find on the GX Overtrail. We find shiny black plastic wheel arches. I am a little bit surprised about that. We don't have power rock rails or power steps or anything like that, just the fixed steps right there from the factory. This will pump itself up a little bit higher than the regular LX, but it's not as user adjustable. So we get about a 2-inch lift or so right here in its H2 height mode. If you're in 4 low and the vehicle senses that you're stuck, it can actually give you a little bit more lift, about a 1/2 inch extra lift. But the other thing to know is that the bumper out back, that is also the same as the rest of the LX lineup. I'll let Travis come along here. So effectively, approach, breakover, and departure angles are going to be very, very similar to the rest of the LX lineup. Let's check out the interior now, starting with the front seats in this very, very expensive LX 700H. This one's about $140,000. Of course, we have an extending thigh cushion on the driver's side. We have front seat massage. Those are standard features in the LX. Keep in mind, this is the flagship SUV after all in the Lexus lineup. We also have a powered tilt telescopic memory link steering wheel, 3-position memory over there on the driver's door. However, on the passenger side, you'll notice we actually don't have the same level of adjustability. It still has the massage function, but it doesn't have the power extending thigh cushion. It also does not have the 3-position memory on the passenger door. I do think that's an interesting omission. Now, in case you're wondering, here is what that ultra luxury package looks like from the driver's seat when that's fully extended. So the passenger seat is kind of in the way of the side view mirror. Right now, Travis is back there tucking up that ottoman and then moving the seat back into its normal position. Fortunately, the head restraint does flip forwards. That way gives you a little bit more room in the back. Now, up here, we have a pretty standard sized moonroof just over the driver and front passengers' heads. As I said, no pano roof. We also get height adjustable shoulder belts for the front seats, those integrated window shades back there, and lots of grips to help people get in and out of the vehicle. I love the fact that we don't just get this handle up here for the passenger, there's also one for the driver. So if you're a shorter person, you have mobility issues and getting in and out of a vehicle is tricky, this definitely will help. On the door panels, obviously we have a lot of soft touch materials, stitched materials for the midsection of the door, some soft touch injection molded plastics right there on the upper section of the door, but not as much stitched leather as we find in some of the competition. Now, keep in mind that imitation materials, they are going to last longer in the sun than real leather, so that's probably why Lexus uses them. We find harder plastics down there at the bottom of the door, but most of the dashboard section, that's all going to be the same sort of soft touch material we find all the way around. We have a sort of slot style glove compartment. It is on the small side, so I don't suspect an 11-inch tablet would fit in there. Contrasting stitching all the way around there. I do think this two-screen setup is a little bit dated compared to some of the newer Lexus models, but this screen is running the latest infotainment software. So, of course, it has a big implementation of CarPlay, and you can actually make it full screen, which is a nice touch. So if you don't want these shortcut buttons on the left side, you can expand that out. Of course, has factory navigation, the same software that we find in all of the latest models, of course. One weird thing, though, the seat massage function, that is controlled via this screen rather than through controls on the seat. It is one of the best seat massages available in this segment, definitely in keeping with the European options, but accessing it is just a little bit convoluted. I wish there was a shortcut button on the seat itself. Finding that option, it's just kind of a pain. We have this arrangement button where you can also have it fold or return the front passenger seat. That's unique to this particular trim. We have a power volume knob over here, power button for the vehicle there. Then we have this lower screen. This is a combination of climate control. You can see certain vehicle readouts there, and some configurations as well. So brightness and contrast, this is just a little color screen to show you that brightness and contrast there. It's not actually changing ambient lighting or anything like that, and you can turn that screen off. I am still surprised that the sort of theme of this screen doesn't quite match the theme of the screen above. But here we have what you're probably going to leave it on most of the time, which is the climate control functions, although we have lots of physical buttons for the climate control as well, something I also appreciate. So if you'd rather wear gloves, you can interact with most of the climate control functions that way. Down here we have the mode select dial. This requires a bit of explanation. So this is going to change things like drive mode or your multi-terrain select or crawl control, and which option that knob controls is dependent on what these three buttons are set to. So for instance, if we're in this mode here, it is not going to be operating drive mode. It's going to be operating those other settings. Over here, the multi-terrain select, rotate that around. You'll notice it's going to actually show you what it's going through right there. And it's going to automatically adjust the height of the suspension as well. Now below that, we have two USB inputs. One works with the system for CarPlay. Wireless CarPlay is also supported, by the way. We then have heated and ventilated seats, the automated parking button right there. We have a new joystick style shifter. It's a nice and large one. Park is that button there, drive is down there, manual is back there, and then P for park. The reason they went with the electronic shifter is to enable the automated parking system that you can do inside and outside the vehicle. Over here we have two big cup holders, Qi wireless charging mat, some of the other controls for the system, like the electric parking brake, auto brake hold, locking the center differential. Yep, it has a true center differential, not just a transfer case. We then have traction control and then the suspension height adjustment buttons there. And you'll notice, yep, real wood trim in here. So even though we have seen real wood trim disappear in some Lexus models, it's still here in this one. Rotating all the way around, we have a center console that opens up to reveal a standard cool box. That's another kind of cool feature that is standard in every LX. On the driver's side, we have a full color head-up display and then a 12-inch LCD instrument cluster below. This is running Lexus's latest instrument cluster software, so it's highly configurable. You can adjust the three different sections of the display, running through a bunch of different options, including a moving map display, and then you can save different presets so that we can choose different layouts and cycle through them very easily. Moving out from there, we have a big round Lexus steering wheel. This is part of the driver monitoring system right back there. Shift paddles on the back. These are a really nice placement and they move with the steering wheel. We then find physical controls rather than touch controls like we find in so many luxury vehicles for things like volume up, down, track forward, backward, etc. This button module controls that multifunction display. This button module over here controls the adaptive cruise control system. And this now receives the Lexus LSS Plus 3.0, quite a mouthful there. That is basically Lexus's latest version of their active safety system, including all of their latest things like adaptive cruise control, lane centering, etc. That is all standard. Let's check out the ridiculous back seat in this, again, fully loaded LX 700. This one has the luxury rear seat package. Are you feeling relaxed back there, Travis?
Yeah, I could spend a few minutes back here if I absolutely had to.
We get the reclining seats. We also get this sort of throne seat over here on the passenger side. The big difference, of course, is that this has the ottoman. So Travis is sitting in the least comfortable back seat.
Can you believe it? Yeah.
And what are we also getting here in the controls?
I have quite a bit going on. So I have a bunch of seat controls. I also have climate controls, a couple cup holders here, a Qi wireless charging mat, individual volumes back here, and then relaxation. because it turns out I can go ahead and get some refreshments here for the left and the right seat.
Yeah, so seat massage back there in the rear.
Yep.
Again, front seat massage is standard in the LX, which is kind of cool. Now, in this model, what's under there? Is that cup holders?
So we have a couple of cup holders here, and then there's a little bit more space here. Not super easy to access, but a little storage cubby and then some power, including HDMI.
And then air vents right there in the middle. That's kind of a nice touch. I do like air vents in the center console. What do you got behind you there? You got a Qi wireless charging mat?
Yep, so Qi wireless charging mat, and then this also opens up. Now I have a factory cool box there.
Oh, is this a dual opening one? Oh, yes, it opens from either side. Nice touch.
Yep, and I believe we have some headphones in there and quite a bit more power available to you as well.
Now let's check out the third row, starting with how the second row seats move to get back in there.
Pretty easy, one lever, pull, it'll fold together and slide forward.
Now, obviously that means you can't leave child seats latch anchored into place because that is a very traditional mechanism there. Yep. I'll hand you the camera so we can see what's going on over here. You can also, of course, climb over that seat if you want to. We have power folding third row seats, buttons here and buttons in the back, of course, as well. Just take a while to get that in place. And yes, third row, even with the hybrid battery pack under there. So that is a nice, important touch. Let's go ahead and close the door, see how we squeeze back here. It's not the worst. My head is definitely on the ceiling. Travis would be even a little tighter. We have air vents back here. I do appreciate that even if you get the model without the third row, you still get air vents in the back for pets, things like that. But this is really best suited for children or really short people because the way these second row seats move, put that back into its regular position, they don't scoot forward and backwards. So this is all the legroom you're ever going to get. And that's acceptable. It's not really a problem, but it does mean it's going to be less comfortable, again, for adults to sit in the back. We do, however, get power reclining third row seats. That's kind of a cool touch. And that is yet another button in the back. And those are over here on the side, along with the cup holders and some USB-C charge points. In the cargo area, there are a few changes due to the hybrid system. The floor is a little bit higher than it is in the regular LX, and there's some solutions to kind of work around that. We still have cargo tie-downs, nice touch there, and there's a little bit of additional storage space here and there. You could put things like your emergency triangle in these little cubbies, and they give you this little shelf with legs that pop out and then latch into place. They say this is good for almost 180 pounds. So we then have the third row seat right there, giving us a flat floor. Other interesting touches, the way the side plastics are integrated, it's a little bit kind of clunky, actually, I would have to say. Behind this little door, we find a fuse box and a relay box. Then if I go over here to this other side, I'll let Travis trade places with me. It's up. Flows are folded in. This is where the 12-volt battery hides right in there. It's a little bit difficult to see. And we then have a 2.4 kilowatt inverter. Nice touch. You can run refrigerators, things like that in the Outback. And then back here, we have the bottle jack, of course, because we still have that, and a full-size spare tire tucked up underneath the vehicle. Under the body, that's where the spare tire is located, and then above that is where we find the battery pack. It has been sealed for greater water protection versus a regular hybrid pack in a Tacoma or a Sequoia. And then over here on this side, you can see we have just one exhaust outlet. Kind of an interesting touch. All right, we are now out on, not really a trail yet, we're on a gravel road to get to the trail. So let's talk about how this feels out on the road first. The hybrid system is significantly smoother than the related hybrid system that I first drove in the Tundra and Sequoia. It seems like this has had a decent amount more time work done on the software to control the clutch action and just the interaction system from hybrid mode to EV mode.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, from the passenger seat, it's been a very comfortable ride as well. I mean, not only has it been fairly smooth, but this suspension system, obviously we're getting different wheels and tires with this particular Overtrail model, and they do a good job of not only being knobbier tires for some better off-road traction, but still giving you tons of cushion. And with an 18-inch wheel, I hate to say it, but it looks kind of small on this vehicle, but we get a lot of tire, and that comes through to the cabin very nicely.
Now, obviously, out on the road, the Overtrail is not going to have the grip level you find in the rest of the lineup, but the core suspension design is very similar and really quite unique in this segment, because if we're talking about a Grand Cherokee L, which I suppose is sort of a counterpoint to this,
Yeah.
or a
Wagoneer,
Cadillac
maybe.
Escalade, Wagoneer, etc. They all use more of a traditional adaptive air suspension system. Land Rover, obviously, very close competitor to this with the Range Rover lineup there. But airbags, they have a different feel to them, and they're not going to be quite as durable, not quite as reliable long-term. And Lexus was really specific in saying that the reason they went with a hydraulic lift system like this is because of that additional durability. It definitely changes the feel. We also, of course, have a solid axle in the back. Let's pause here for a moment because we need to talk more about that number at the top of your screen. We can't just put it up there without comment because this is a hybrid. So if we come to a stop, the engine is off.
Yep.
And if now I romp on the pedal, there is a momentary delay, and of course the turbos have to get spooled up. So your 0 to 60 time is going to be different whether the engine is on or off, and there doesn't really seem to be any good way of keeping the engine on if, say, you're at a stoplight and you need to make sure to get it to that freeway entrance or whatever you want to do, right?
Right.
So if we're here stopped and I floor it to try and brake torque it, then I let it go. Sometimes that does seem to help the 0 to 60 time. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just doesn't want to go.
Yeah, I mean, the system does not like it when you're trying to override it, I guess, in this case. So this is not going to be the greatest off the stop line. If you're showing your friends from the stop how fast it is, that's not going to be where it excels. But the good news is most of the power is there and available for things like passing or when you're towing. It's just
those are two great use cases. And off-roading, obviously, the three big use cases for this. Also, I should mention that the driver monitoring system is a little bit touchy here. Now, on the stopping distance score, just in case you guys are wondering, it did not matter whether we were in the Overtrail model or this top-end luxury model with the 4 seats total, 2 in the back, 2 in the front here. 124 feet. It's actually better than I had assumed. Given just the size of the LX, it's pretty common for a big body on frame SUV like this to take over 130 feet to stop. So pretty solid stopping distances. Now let's test out this hybrid system smoothness on this small off-road course that Lexus has created for us. This is an excellent place to talk about that clutch engagement. If you're comparing this to Sequoia or a Grand Cherokee 4xe or any of the other plug-in hybrid off-roaders or hybrid off-roaders, they generally have a very similar design to their transmission and hybrid system, where we have a single clutch, electric motor, traditional transmission, and sometimes those engagements can be less than smooth. Something that we really noticed in the pre-production versions of the Tundra and Sequoia, but I have to say, they're significantly smoother in this LX.
And I think that's exactly what you would expect from a Lexus product, but hopefully this is something that we see carry through the rest of the Toyota Lexus lineup that uses this configuration. But it is certainly going to make it more enjoyable when you're out here, because this is a capable machine. You just want to be able to enjoy its capability.
And while we're talking about the capability, let's talk about just the way the system is designed. So we have a true center differential, which is a really nice touch. So in this off-road situation, I can just crank the steering wheel like this, no binding, no problems at all, because we have that open center. Of course, if I want to lock it for better traction, like on this hill, just a click of a button, all of a sudden that center coupling is locked, so we can get more capability there. And then we're going to need to engage a camera, so let's see if we can find the camera button here.
Yes.
There we go. It's over here to the left of the driver, so now we have a camera there. I will say that screen does feel a little small due to the age of the LX. We have that 2-screen setup in the dashboard we saw earlier. So versus something like that new 4Runner that we were driving, oddly enough, last week, we don't have quite as much visibility. The other thing that's worth noting is that we have the same bumpers front and rear as a regular LX. So the approach and departure angles, they do get better with the extra height increase, but not as much as you might want.
And I think that's something that's going to work for the average Lexus customer who's purchasing this brand new. I think if you did want to take this further off the beaten trail, you really wanted to make it your own, obviously you already spent a pretty penny on it, you're ready to spend some more. Aftermarket is going to be your best friend. I think that makes perfect sense for Lexus, not trying to do too much when people are going to start wanting to customize it anyway.
Right. And I also love the fact that we have a front and a rear locker here. We have the rear locker engaged. Interestingly, though, you cannot engage just the rear locker without having the center locked. So it's progressive, which is pretty logical. You have to engage the center, then you can engage the rear, then you can also lock the front. So definitely lots of capability out on a course like this. But The big thing I noticed, though, just the smoothness, again, of this hybrid system, something that I know we have covered a lot when we're talking about Toyota's new 48-volt hybrid systems that are using a traditional automatic transmission. This doesn't have any of those particular worries. Now let's get down to brass tacks, Travis. How much is an LX700 going to set you back?
Well, the interesting thing about the pricing structure is that it actually starts out on the Overtrail. So that's going to start out at just over 115,000 plus a 1350 destination delivery fee. That's going to be about $9,000 more than a 600 is going to start at. So it's a bit of a jump for that particular hybrid model, but obviously Overtrail gets more equipment. This particular model is the ultra luxury, starting over $140,000, but you can go either an Overtrail or a luxury or this ultra luxury or a premium. You do have some options.
Yeah, and of course, if you want the ultimate Lexus, the ultimate LX, I actually might even argue just ultimate Lexus, you want this one with those incredible back seats that we saw earlier. I think I might skip them, but I am really intrigued by the Overtrail trim because it's really, really comfortable. And then you get the extra security, the extra off-road security of that front locker. The only way to get it, though.
Yeah, well, the only downside about the Overtrail is that you can't do a 3-row on the Overtrail. So if you are trying to make this as practical as you can, that's gonna be one thing missing. I misspoke there. The premium is not gonna be on the list for the H. It's gonna be the F Sport handling, which kind of makes sense. I mean, F Sport is something that we're gonna see a lot of throughout the Lexus lineup these days, but I wouldn't quite call this a sport handling machine.
No, it is quicker than the regular LX600, but as we discussed in the drive section, that's really variable depending on whether the engine happens to be on or off, because there doesn't really seem to be a way to force it on or off. And you do have some choices to make. If you want that front locker, you have to get the Overtrail. If you want some of the other forms and you want the 3rd row, you can't have the front locker, which is a bit of a bummer. I wish there was a way to just check that one option box on the others. I don't know if that's going to be a big deal for the first owner, but if you want to get one of these in a few years down the road, that might be a bit of a problem.
It would be Overtrail or bust on that end, yep.
Now, here is the trickiest one. Would you get something like this or a Range Rover? Because that is really what the LX is about. This is about being the more dependable, more rugged, body-on-frame alternative to a Range Rover.
So that Range Rover is going to be more exciting, but excitement isn't always good, right? So your repair bills are going to be a little bit more exciting. You're going down the road, hearing the engine is going to be a little bit more exciting, but this is going to be more dependable, reliable, and consistent. And I think that's exactly what Lexus shoppers are looking for. A lot of folks who get this are already in the Lexus family, but it does bring a number of folks over from other manufacturers, and it might be those that are a little bit too exciting to own on a regular basis.
So let us all know down there in the comments section below, are you looking for reliability or are you looking for excitement? You actually have a little bit more excitement now in this LX hybrid, but I would argue that some of those supercharged V8s, they may be just a hair more exciting in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, the good news here is that we have a little bit better fuel economy on the hybrid with almost 50 horsepower more, about 100 more pound-feet of torque. So it is kind of a best of all worlds, but that is not always the most exciting way to do it.
Let us know down there in the comment section, and I'll see all of you next time.